I reincarnated. I really reincarnated, but before you get confused, I'm G to explain a little what happened. My name was Tomoki, and one day a co-worker called Kiritsubo invited me to drink that night, and things happened as they had to happen. But later this girl got drunk as hell, so I decided to take her to her home for her to rest. But I was still in the mood for a drink, so I went to a nearby store to buy some alcohol. But when I was on my way home, I saw her, a girl I already knew. Her name is Crimine, and she may look like a stalker, but I consider her my sister. Anyway, the fact is that I called her, but she didn't say a single word, which gave me a very bad feeling. However, I approached her, and in return I received a stab wound in my stomach. And to be honest, it didn't hurt. I didn't even imagine that it was going to kill me. It seemed like a small wound and easy to heal. But I realized that Crimine was using an electrified knife called Nenikaruri, and from one second to another fell to the ground because of the electricity. I couldn't even defend myself, and Crimine kept stabbing me. And seeing her with her face soaked in blood, she was completely unrecognizable. And I guess at that moment I died. And well, I revived. I thought it had just been a nightmare in bad taste. Or maybe the alcohol had gone to my head. But no, I actually died. They definitely murdered me. However, I still keep thinking. Why do I keep thinking? I don't understand it. And when I wanted to open my eyelids, they felt very heavy, and the first thing I saw was a very ugly man with green skin. Day 1, after he did some strange things to me, that man told me that I was born again. Day 2, in the midst of the confusion, I tried to move my body, but it did not respond. The only thing I could do was look around. It seems that I am in a cave, and to top it off, I am together with several ugly and green babies. To tell the truth, they look like goblins. When I was finally able to move a hand, I noticed that it looked like theirs. It seems that I have been reborn as a goblin, which unfortunately even made me want to cry. Now I understand why I can hardly move. It is logical. I am a goblin baby newborn. But hey, I did what any goblin baby would do. Sleep. Day 3. Now I find out that goblins actually grow very fast. Overnight, I am the size of a child going to school. However, this body is much weaker than my previous body. However, I tried to behave like others, like all a good savage. I also noticed that the rate of growth for these children is normal. I suppose it is because they are beasts of nature and they are forced to develop very quickly in order to survive. Of course, unlike humans. But hey, since I was blessed with a second chance, I'll make sure I live it to the fullest. And to begin with, I have to train this weak body. And so I spent the whole day pushing my body to the limit until I literally fell from exhaustion. Now it is not so difficult to move. Day 4. The next day they sent me to look for my own food. When I was only 4 days old, I had already gone hunting. So I went out with another goblin called Kichai, and while we were looking for our food, we talked about various topics, and in the end we became friends. I forgot to say it, but because goblins have such a low birth rate, they kidnap and rape human women. After a while, we found an abandoned cave, in which we found several women. All seemed to have lost hope of living. However, it was clear that they still wanted to live. I don't know. It was very cloudy for me to see all this, so I just limited myself to praying for them. And then we kept looking until we found a kind of rabbit with one horn. So I explained the plan to Kichai, and we launched ourselves against it to hunt it down, and we finally succeeded. This team hunting thing is more fun. However, Kichai doesn't understand the moral of team hunting, so that I had to scold him just a little to learn to share. After this, I took the horn off the horned rabbit to show that my first hunt was a success. But let's put all this aside and talk about that strange voice in my head, which just called me Goblin Roo. I guess that's my new name then. And I also guess that the one who gave it to me was that ugly old man. In any case, I don't like this name at all, so I'll use my name above. I also decided to use the rabbit's horn as a weapon. Maybe I'll find something better later, and his skin will be useful. But just when Kichai woke up, my conscience began to invade me. So to make him leave me alone, I shared part of the loot with him, and he was grateful to me like never before. I didn't know that Kichai was so grateful. In the end, we ate the rabbit together, so long story short, I ate some meat, got a new gun, made a new friend, so this day wasn't bad at all. Day 5. It is already the 5th day, and today I am also hunting for something to eat. And I meet a rabbit with a horn again. So I used my weapon made of horn and ended the life of that animal. And when I snatched its horn, I realized that it was a little bigger than the one I found yesterday. And once again that voice mentions my name. In any case, today's loot was much better than yesterday's. And since I was with Kichai, I decided to share the loot with him again. And while we were eating, that voice spoke to me again. And this time he told me that I have learned a new skill called escaping. So there is no doubt, it is about that. But let me explain. Before I died, I was an Esper, which means I was a person with some special powers. And I guess that ability reincarnated with me. In my old life, 1 in 10,000 people had a chance of being born as an Esper, with a specific ability. And I especially was born with the ability of absorption. So in simpler words, everything I put in my mouth can be eaten. It doesn't matter how hard it is, nor how toxic, since they become harmless inside my body. Also, absorbing things gives me new abilities and more power, but this has certain rules. Like for example, if I want to eat creatures, I have to eat them before they are 12 hours after they died, in order to absorb their ability. And if I keep eating that same thing, I can improve the ability that absorb and thus obtain more power. And you will think that this absorption ability is not a big deal, but the truth is that the more I eat, the stronger I become. In my old life, I had eaten several things. I even ate some Esper that were evil, and I had countless number of powers, but now I have another life, and I have lost all these abilities. Still, I guess the fact that I have retained the absorption ability is already too lucky. Well, whatever, I've already figured it out. Now you know, so I decided to continue our hunt. And with Kichai accompanying me, I hope I can recover my abilities soon. After continuing the hunt, I realized that this ability to escape allows me to run faster. Also, after hunting some things and eating them, we finally got full, and Kichai began to admire me. I guess now he understands that I will be the leader of the group. Day 6. We met a goblin called Gobumi, and she admires us for having hunted horned rabbits. I suppose that hunting these animals is still very difficult for her age, and I asked her what she was eating then, and she told me that nuts from a tree. This has helped her stay alive, since others starve to death because they are still babies to go hunting. And when they tried, they were impaled by the horns of these rabbits. And although it sounds very silly, it can happen. Normally, a newborn goblin, he is usually retarded and thoughtless, as well as small and weak, and they went out hunting empty-handed. Now that I realize it, the others are starting to use weapons, as well as us, as if they were imitating us. I guess that's not its bad. Meanwhile, Gobumi does nothing but praise and admire me, because I'm very strong and intelligent as well as great. I don't know how to take it since being popular among the goblins. It's not something I've experienced before. But while I was thinking about it, Kichai mentioned that he's hungry again, so we decided to go hunting again. This time I invited Gobumi to learn to hunt and stop eating those ugly nuts. But she started to hug me and started crying. I don't know if I said something bad, but she quickly raised her face with a big smile, and after thanking me repeatedly, she agreed to come with us. And after a while, we managed to hunt several horned rabbits, and that's how this day ended. Day 7. Today it woke up raining, so we didn't go hunting. However, in order not to waste time, we began to make our own weapons. It thought about making a knife to obtain some good skins. So I used a stone that I had found yesterday in the river and managed to make one. With it we can make some pieces of leather to make garments and put aside these horrible loincloths. And quickly more goblins our age were coming to observe what we were doing. But I just ignored them and we went on with our business. After a while we were able to make 3 knives, and then by afternoon, Gobumi, Kichai and I were thinking of a new way of hunting. But we were interrupted by that ugly old man. Then I found out that he is 20 years old, and if he is already the oldest of all. So I decided to pause our strategy plan to listen to Grandpa. Grandpas always know a lot of things, and after listening to him for a while I learned many things about this world. But what intrigued me the most was why our parents were not in this place. And it seems that everyone went out to hunt and steal loot, and those who survive are the strongest. Thinking about it is something inspiring. But 20 years seems like a short time to me. Maybe I can live a little longer. In the end, the old man finished telling us his stories and went to the treasure room. However, I was left wondering if goblins procreate because they are good with that, or because their life is very short. Well, whatever, I had that little doubt. I guess I'll have to find out on my own. Day 8. It's another day and we decided to put our new hunting plan to the test. And I'm not going to deny it. We encountered several threats, but we managed to overcome them. I finally managed to realize that the plan was extremely effective. Gobumi is support with her stick with a sling that I made myself. Kichai in front and me in the center. This formation turns out to be very effective. At the end of the hunt we obtained a lot of food and new prey. But Gobumi and Kichai were still not satisfied, so they hunted 2 more rabbits. So we started to see the loot. And as our first prey we have a raccoon with armor. And although I tried to pierce it with my horn, it was not possible, so I thought that it could be useful to make armor. Plus I ate that hard shell, and I learned a new ability called Shell. It seems useful. Then we check the other prey. It's called 7 Color Bat. I guess its wings will be used to make Gobumi a weapon. But I couldn't absorb any ability from this bat, but I got stronger, so I guess if I eat another, maybe I can learn some skill, so let's move on to the next one. This creature is the highlight. I named it a night viper, and even though it has extremely tough skin, I managed to cut off its head and we shared the body. And when I started to eat it, my hands were completely paralyzed and this scared me a lot. But it turns out that I learned 5 new skills in one hit. But I think I was lucky hunting this snake, because it was much stronger than I. However, when I eat something stronger than myself, I can extract more abilities and power. I still had the head of the viper, so I decided to keep it to extract its poison and soak some of my weapons. Now I would only have to find an opponent to test my new and improved poisonous weapon, but I decided to avoid fatigue and eat the head. Among the abilities that I learned from the same viper, there was poison absorption and poison tolerance, so I guess eating it won't do me any harm. Day 9. It's a new day and I started to create an armor with the things we found. I also made a needle and made some silk to be able to sew the pieces. But just at that moment Kichai was hungry, and since it was raining I told him that I wasn't thinking of going out hunting, and I recommended him to eat insects. Maybe it's only for a day. I also gave him some things I made for him, so I gave him a shield, which will be very useful since he is the one who goes in front of our formation. And with the colorful wings of the 7-color bat I decided to make a garment for Gobumi. So I asked her if it wasn't too flashy, but she loved it, so I guess it's okay. I also made her a necklace with the fangs of these bats, and as usual she jumped towards me and hugged me while she thanked me on several occasions. And well, now we no longer carry ugly rags. Now we have something better than that. Day 10. Today we went out hunting again and we killed several creatures, the same type of the ones we had hunted before. However, unfortunately we didn't manage to catch any 7-colored bats. And we also found other monsters, but they seemed to be higher level than us, so just we ignored them. And yes, you heard right. It seems that in this world there is something called levels, which indicates the level of strength of a creature. And although I don't quite understand how it works, I tried to concentrate and a number 86 appeared. So I guess that's my level. I also said the same to Kichai and Gobumi, and Kichai told me that number 78 had appeared, and Gobumi 55, so I'm the strongest in the group. What I don't know is how to raise that level, but I guess it should be by killing creatures. That being said, a level 100 goblin is still weaker, but according to Grandpa, when you reach level 100 then you can rank up to a higher species, and the order of ascension would be goblin, hobgoblin and ogre, but there are many kinds of evolution according to the grandfather, and he also told me that I had to choose carefully. I wonder what will be the best decision. Day 11. As it was routine, every day, we went hunting, and in the middle of the hunt we found a cave, so we went in to take a look. We didn't count on the fact that we were entering a nest of 7-colored bats, so we quickly told Gobumi to go ahead, and meanwhile I stayed with Kichai to give her some time, because there were too many. I even thought that I was finally going to die again. But thanks to the skills I learned when I ate that snake at night, we managed to survive. Plus the armor also protected us a lot, and in the end we managed to kill 30 bats of 7 colors. And after the battle, I ate 10 of these animals, and I learned some skills. Among them I learned echolocation, and it helps me so I can scan the terrain and locate animals to ambush, so I'll put it to good use. Day 12. Finally, when it got dark we returned home as usual. The goblins have the night eye ability, so we can hunt at night without any problem. Of course, not to mention the terrible nocturnal beasts that come out at night and can even kill us very easily. However, I'm going to sleep, because I'm very tired and tomorrow there will be many more things to do. But something happened just around midnight, and thanks to the ability to sense presences I was able to react in time. As it turns out that several goblins my age decided to attack me while I was sleeping. There were 6 of them and they had sticks in their hands. They clearly wanted to finish me off. However, thanks to my poisoned horn I managed to kill one. And as for the others, I applied a good dose of tranquilizing poison, and then give me the pleasure of giving them a well-deserved beating. But so much fuss made more goblins arrive, so I was forced to remove the poison. And to tell the truth, I expected to receive some punishment or something for having killed a goblin. But it seems that for adults this is a normal savage act, so they didn't utter a word. The real problem was when Gobumi found out that they wanted to hurt me. She got so furious that she attacked one of those goblins and almost killed him. So I had to sedate her to calm her down, and then I put her to sleep. And as for the corpse, I dragged it outside and made sure no one was spying on me. And after this I ate it. Day 13 finally dawned, and this time we decided to go into the deepest part of the forest until we reached the foot of a mountain. And there we found a new prey. It was a monster very similar to the goblins, only taller and with the head of a pig. And after we chased him for a while we thought that we could defeat him. But first we had to make sure that he was alone. So I used the skills that I learned when I ate those bats, and made sure that there was no one together with him. So I soaked a stone with my poison and gave it to Gobumi so that she would stick it right in his eyes. And when this pig was blinded and weak, Kichai attacked him, and everything went perfectly, because the monster was very badly injured. But we still could not lower our guard, so we made sure that the monster could not ask for reinforcements. And for this Kichai smashed its head and I stabbed it several times. And that's how we hunted our first orc. And the truth is that it tastes very good. It tastes very similar to the taste of pork. And obviously I learned many skills. Among them I learned the orc language. So it occurred to me that just as there is a skill to speak with orcs, then there must be an equal one to speak with humans. And after we ate orc, we continued hunting and finally returned home, and since we had hunted much more than usual, I decided to take food to the other goblins. Yes, to those same ones who attacked me yesterday, because the most likely thing is that they did it for food. since they had not been able to eat for days and they were hungry, and they attacked me because they wanted to subdue me so that I would hunt for them. But well, the fact is that we are of the same race, so that is why I decided to help them by giving them some food. But what I didn't expect is that they would be so happy. They also thanked me and told me that they were going to return it to me. So I taught them to form groups and to organize themselves to hunt horned rabbits. So I suppose what I did was not bad at all. And when they learned to hunt, they all started to bring me food. But I prefer they eat it. I can hunt my own food. The truth is, this day was quite beautiful, but I was very tired. And when I left to sleep, I started to level up, and it was a bit of a strange sensation. I finally received the blessing of the god of life and death. Of course, all this was told to me by that voice. I finally fell asleep. Day 14. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was that my hands had changed, and also my skin was now black, and my body had grown a lot. And it seems that Kichai experienced the same thing, only he still has green skin. So it was something strange for both him and me to recognize each other. Suddenly I had the doubt of wanting to see how I looked now with my evolution. So I used the knife that I made with that stone to serve as a mirror. And the truth is that what I saw was so surprising that I was even scared. I looked pretty good, to tell the truth. I also grew a lot and my abilities increased his power a lot. So we went to eat something with Kichai, and then we went to see Grandpa, because surely he will give us advice that will help us a lot with our new lives. And he told me about the god's protection and stuff. I'll tell you what it's about later. The fact is that what he told me was that the evolution of a goblin to a hobgoblin is very strange, because hobgoblins tend to look alike physically to humans, and because Kichai and I have different skins is because I am a variable of that evolution, which means that I am stronger than a normal hobgoblin. Although to reach this evolution requires special actions. The black in my skin means it is the same black as one of the gods. This supposedly means that I can use death skills or something like that. So he advised me to be very careful because someone might try to kidnap me. He also told us that only we could evolve with just 1 month of birth. So basically Kichai and I are the strongest in our community. So we were granted the privilege of entering the treasure room whenever we wanted. And we can also use human women. And meanwhile I must cover any feature that reveals that I have the protection of the god of life and death. After everything that happened, I got ready to make some pants for Kichai. And just when I went to ask him his size, I noticed him quite strange. And he told me that he wanted to see how strong he had become, so he challenged me to a duel. And he said that to someone who loves to fight. And we spent the whole day fighting and testing the limits of our new bodies. And although I have many abilities, I must confess that it was hard for me to win the duel, since Kichai adopted an extremely resistant body and his ability to absorb damage is ridiculously high. And since we spend a large part of the day fighting, the rest of the day we dedicate ourselves to readjust our clothes because the ones we had were already too small for our bodies. And we didn't worry about food because the other goblins who learned to hunt brought us enough food. Day 15. It is our first day as hobgoblins, and therefore we will go hunting to see what we get. But Kichai and I decided to go look for these monsters from the other time. And this time we saw different ones. They had fox heads. I have no idea what they are called, but I will call them kobolds. The thing is that we analyzed them for a while and created a strategy to attack them, since there were 2 of them, and we are basically 2-2, since Gabumi has not yet evolved and therefore she is still weaker. Anyway, she was able to distract them and we took care of going to the fight. So I decided that it wouldn't be a bad option to use my poisoned horn. But Kichai told me not to, because he wanted to try his body one more time, but now in a real situation. So I withdrew from the fight and gave him the pleasure of leaving him to fend for himself. I never doubted Kichai, so I just stopped to watch how he cracked his face against those 2 kobolds. Finally Kichai was victorious and celebrated with a lot of euphoria. How strange and good at the same time. Yesterday Kichai was nothing more than a weakling. Now he's a champion. After that, Gabumi began to treat Kichai's wounds, and meanwhile, I took the things of those kobolds. I found some weapons, and of course, his 2 swords are wonderful for us, so I took them without a doubt. And then we certainly ate, and I learned very useful skills. And then Gabumi appeared and brought me some fire spirit stones. These are used to cast fire spells on them, and I ate them. Maybe I find something useful to absorb from them. And indeed I learned pyrokinesis. How crazy. Now I can use fire at my mercy. This would undoubtedly be very useful. I think it is the best skill I have learned so far, since fire is essential for survival. Not to mention that we will no longer have to eat raw meat. Then we went back to hunting, and I was surprised that my hunting apprentices managed to hunt at their own expense a raccoon with armor. So as a reward for their achievement, I cooked the meat for them. And as for the armor of the animal, I kept it because I may need it for something. Day 16. Today my hunting apprentices met with me to ask me to teach them more ways to hunt new creatures. It seems they had an encounter with a night viper, but they avoided it because they didn't know what to do. That's pretty good. In any case, they wanted me to teach them how to fight one of them. So I asked them what I received in exchange, and they offered me part of the loot every time they hunted one. It seems to me a pretty decent deal, so I decided to take it. So with the help of Kichai and Gobumi, I got to train them. And since we are talking about survival, and that only the strongest can survive, I made sure to push their bodies to the limit. We trained very hard, and I also made sure that they learned that I am in charge of this place. And at the end of the training, everyone was exhausted. Everyone except me, so I decided to go hunting for everyone to eat. I also offered to make them equipment with the useful parts of the animals they managed to hunt. Especially, I hope this motivates them even more to hunt. After that, it got late, so I went hunting alone for the first time. So I took the opportunity to go to the treasure room. I wanted to try to communicate with those women, but I couldn't do it. Those women no longer even had the breath to speak. They barely breathed. They were completely devastated, and in their eyes you could see that they were delirious about her speedy death. And among them there was one who was pregnant. The facts were very unfortunate for me, and to think that that woman, very surely she would be enjoying her life out there. In return, she is trapped here being raped every moment. So I was kind and asked them what they might want to hear. I asked them if they wanted to die. They were so weak that they could barely move halfway their lips. I couldn't understand a single one of their weak words, but clearly I could understand their looks. So I left them a bit of my poison and withdrew from there, and I just didn't want to look back. Day 17. The next day I went to see the goblin grandfather to inform him of some bad news, but he was sleeping, so I had to wake him up. I told him that I had discovered all the women who were in the cellar, all dead. I also told him that maybe they had taken poison and that's why they died peacefully, and to persuade him a little I told him that if he had any idea how they had gotten the poison. I also told him that I got rid of the bottle of poison. However, the grandfather only began to cry for the loss of the women and the baby goblins inside them. And after everything happened, I took the bodies of the women and started to burn them, but not without taking some of their parts and eating them, to acquire some abilities. Well, really I gained many skills, and among them, I learned human language, so I consider myself well served. After that, I went to see Kichai and Gobumi, and I told them that today I didn't feel like going hunting, so I sent them. But I soon realized that Gobumi had already turned into a hobgoblin. And the truth is that I found it incredible how cute she has become. Now I'll have to make her new pieces of clothing because the ones she had obviously no longer fit her. So I could say that it is the perfect moment to use the skill of the artisan, so I can make higher quality garments. Day 18. It's a new day, and as usual, we went hunting after training. This time we were luckier with the kobolds, because we found 3 of them. Also, one of them had a bow that would be quite good for us, so we concentrated to attack him first. I'm very happy that we all have such a decent level of strength. Even Gobumi has progressed very well with the training. Also, she is very fast and quite intelligent. Compared to Kichai, he clearly has no intelligence, but he does have an impressive strength. I even get nervous when I see him fighting. Anyway, the fact is that after fighting with the kobolds, we dismembered them and usurped their weapons as well as the things that would be useful to us. And I gave Gobumi as a gift the bow. She will put it to good use. And as for the absorption of skills, I did not manage to absorb any, but in exchange I was able to increase the level of the ones that I had already learned. Day 19. Today I felt like going to take a look at the storage cave. I wanted to find out if perhaps here I will find some valuable things belonging to the women who were kidnapped here, and taking advantage of the fact that I have the skills to detect and analyze, I may as well be successful. I didn't really want to come here before, but considering that I can find something, I changed my mind. And I just found some useful equipment. I also found medicine and magic potions, but the best of all is that I found some magic books. I continued to check and I found a sword and a dagger in good condition, so it will be my new equipment. But suddenly a better idea came to me, so I ate them, and Kichai and Gobumi were watching. But the good thing is that I was able to learn some skills too, thanks to these weapons, so I think that it wasn't that bad. After doing a little inventory, we took out what we were going to occupy and then we went hunting. And when we got to our cave, some goblins arrived with a lot of food and offered it all to me, but I had to reject them because honestly I was not going to eat all that food. Day 20. We have already been training with the other goblins for 5 days in a row. Everyone has already changed their physical forms. Now they look like goblin soldiers. It is much better that the goblins are in this form. Otherwise they would have surely already been killed by some monster while hunting or things like that. By the end of the training, we equipped ourselves with some things that we had brought from the storage cave and went hunting. It is really getting better every time. Now we managed to catch many night vipers. In addition, we also hunted raccoon dogs and 5 kobolds. It should be noted that yesterday in the cave we found a crossbow and I gave it to Gobumi. I also put poison in his arrows, and on Kichai's side I gave him heavy type armor and a great axe. He loves to be around within the fight, so that equipment is very convenient for him. And lastly, there is me. I contribute to the group with my leadership and my ambush ideas. Not even the kobolds are a challenge for us. What's really strange is that we have not hunted pig-headed orcs again. On the one hand, its taste is delicious, and on the other hand, I need to improve my skills, and since that day we have not come across another. Well, the fact is that we returned to our cave, and I took the opportunity to start reading those magical books that I had found. But it's a shame that I can't use magic, since I don't even know how to do it. I'll just have to settle for seeing them. Plus, these books seem to be of a very high level since they don't even talk about the fundamentals of magic or anything like that basic stuff. And so I spent the rest of the day reading magic books, wishing I could learn something, and since I knew I couldn't, I tormented myself because of this so regrettable fact. Day 21. It's almost been a week of arduous training with the other goblins. I'm happy for their surprising progress. They even managed to catch their first night viper. I'm really proud. A few days ago these goblins were barely satisfied with eating. Though now they can hunt their own food now. I guess I'm a good teacher then. But while I was looking at my apprentices, I realized that some old men were looking at me a little strange. I guess it's strange for them that their race is improving. Anyway, I ignored it and started training with Kichai and Gobumi. And during the training I was able to test some of my abilities to understand how they work. I was also able to confirm that they really are very different from the other goblins. On one hand, Kichai has exceptional strength and a fairly resistant body, and on the other hand, Gobumi is very fast and precise. Her movements are very clean and efficient, and not to mention that they only use techniques that I taught them. So in my head I began to classify the three of us. It could be said that I am in the first place, then Kichai, and finally Gobumi. Well, it was almost time to go hunting again. But this time it would be the first time that we take someone else with us. There is a little goblin called Gabu, and I really have no problem with taking her, only taking into account the ranking issue. Then she would be the weakest of the group. But to clarify, between Kichai, Gobumi, and I, we take care of choosing her. Also, since we are doing so well these days of hunting, we need one more member to help us carry the loot. So I gave her Kichai's old shield and the small bow that used to be Gobumi's. I also took the time to make a small obsidian knife, and I gave her a hunting knife. That will be her basic equipment. After equipping Gabu, we went hunting. And when we were hunting, I could appreciate that she may be able to evolve into a hobgoblin soon, as it is seen that she has a talent for hunting. After the hunt we went home with the loot. Day 22. Coincidentally, today I was walking around the cave and I heard some goblins talking about how they weren't going to need to train anymore. They think they are already very strong and can face everyone. And obviously I had to give them a little poke so they would understand this issue, discipline, and so that they would stop being so cocky. Incidentally, I taught them that they should never let their guard down because this could cost them their lives. Maybe they hate me for how I treat them, but I just want everyone to be stronger. In the evening, we went hunting and I wanted to look for some kobolds to increase my skills. And after searching for a while, we found 6 kobolds gathered. So we started to devise a plan to attack them. But before we could conclude anything, another kobold appeared, with a very peculiar mask. He also had a staff and a costume very similar to a magician. So it's probably that, a magician kobold. So I warned the rest of the group to be very careful. Magicians are especially stronger ones. I don't want us to end up in serious trouble. But while I was thinking about what to do, I thought of paying attention to the magician to see if I could understand a little about that magic stuff. So all we did was chase them very carefully so as not to be discovered. And while they were walking they met a creature called green slime. It has the peculiarity that physical attacks do not hurt that thing. So I saw how the magician and he came into action. And thanks to that I was able to understand a little of those magic issues. And after seeing what I wanted to see, I took advantage of the fact that this magician lowered his guard and attacked him from behind. All it took was a stab that went through his heart. And as for the other 6 kobolds, well, we killed them and I took it as personal loot. The 7 kobold hearts, to be able to eat them and improve my abilities. I was also able to collect the nucleus of that green slime, and I discovered that it is immune to physical attacks. You only have to kill them with fire. By the way, I learned many new skills, and among them, I clearly learned magic skills. So in theory I should start practicing magic to be able to use it. And with that said, we went to continue hunting. This because we wanted Gabu to gain more experience. We all want her to evolve quickly, and we hunted snakes and dogs. And we continued hunting until I literally didn't want to eat anything else today. So I started practicing magic. And I must confess that it was very complicated at first, but after a while I was able to learn to cast some spells. But it still takes a lot of time. It's obvious that I lack more experience. And when I was training, a green slime appeared. What a perfect coincidence. I didn't miss the opportunity to practice, even though I felt very nervous because I still feel like I haven't learned anything. Anyway, I made a spell called Spear of the End and shot it at the green slime. And I could see that maybe I overdid it just a little bit. Then I took its core and learned a skill called bodily fluid manipulation. I guess it will come in handy at some point. Day 23. Today something very peculiar happened in the cave. Because it was raining very hard, nobody went out to hunt. Instead, all the goblins of my generation were gathered talking, and I was surprised that they decided to name me chief. But the fact is that the other goblins began to fight among themselves to be able to gain positions in the hierarchy. But I simply let them fight. After they got tired of fighting, I explained to them how the hierarchy was going to be. Because after me there would be Kichai, Gobumi and Gobu. I also explained to them how the ranks work. Like me, Kichai, Gobumi and Gobu, we are of high rank. We have responsibilities and we must also command those of low rank. And the other goblins that are of low rank have to obey those of high rank. This and some more functions of the chain of command. It was all a very theoretical class. I suppose this would be more than enough for everything to work well. I also wanted to make a class system, but unfortunately we are still very little, so that we'll have to wait. Day 24. This hunting stuff has become a daily routine. Today we found something new, a spider demon. The cobwebs that make these things really scary. Luckily I used some pyrokinesis to be able to remove some cobwebs. But I did not count on the cobwebs being so flammable and everything. It started to catch fire very quickly. So we had to rush out to try to put out the flames. We don't want a forest fire right now. After we got the fire under control, we found the spider fried by the flames. And we ate it. It didn't taste bad at all. In fact, it was like eating fish. Along with the food, I learned a skill that allowed me to shoot webs from my fingertips. But I don't know how to make a web, so I'll have to find more demon spiders to eat. Luckily there were more spiders nearby, so we caught some and ate them. As a result, I learned to weave spider thread, so that will be very useful for making bows and that kind of thing. Also, spiders have a very hard shell, so we decided to take them to make some pieces of armor. Then we left the place with the loot, and while we were walking we finally found what I wanted to find. Orcs, only these looked much stronger, and better equipped. There were also 6, and among them there was one who looked like their boss. He had a weapon that seemed very strong. So we decided not to attack them, since we could have serious problems. Instead, we followed them for an hour until they took us to some mountains, where apparently they have a mining exploration. So I used echolocation to be able to explore inside the caves without having to get closer. And I managed to discover that inside that mining complex there were many orcs. So we decided to withdraw from the place. It would be a suicide mission to attack them. And when we were going back, we found 3 orcs that looked like mine workers. And since they were already a little removed from them, we attacked them, and Gobumi very agilely managed to shoot 2 orcs with arrows just in the head, and I took care of the 3rd. Then we took the bodies to a safe place, and we had a good feast. Besides, we took their pikes, and we burned the rest so as not to leave evidence. And while after eating orc meat, I learned a skill called stench. I don't really see anything interesting in this skill, but I suppose one day I'll think of using it for something. Day 25. Certainly, some goblins have had problems with the training issue. It must be because not all of them can keep up with the same pace. But the good thing is that none of them die when they go hunting. So I'll settle for that. And after we've trained, we'll go out to hunt again. And we found some creatures that we had not seen before, and their fur seemed to be made of steel. So I decided to call them black wolves. I could see some 14 or so, and they were all enjoying a good feast. Luckily, we managed to hide in a place where they won't be able to smell our scent. So we stared at them, and we realized that among them, there was one especially big one, almost twice the size of the other wolves. But of course, they would never expect a surprise arrow, fired by Gobumi's crossbow. Although to be frank, a simple arrow would not kill their leader, but an arrow with poison would. And now being able to kill their leader, we launched a fight against the other wolves. The fight was quite intense. We were all trying very hard. And for my part, I also took the opportunity to practice a little magic. And in the end, the entire pack of wolves was executed. And immediately we all began to collect, which would be useful. Well, everyone except Kichai. He wanted to fight more, so I put him on guard while we collected things. It wasn't entirely necessary since I have the ability to sense presences, but I did it so that Kichai would have something to do. And meanwhile the girls got ready to extract the skins of these wolves, and to cut the meat. And then we divided the meat, and it was enough for each one. More or less 4 wolves each. And I ate the wolf that was their leader, and I was able to learn an ability called Pack Leader. This will allow me to choose the best person for a specific task. I see that in the end that Wolf was a good leader after all. And also learn I gave steel skin, which increases my defense if I put on an armor made with their leather. This is really useful for me, so I will make the most of it. For now we will go to rest. Today was a pretty long day. Day 26. Today we woke up with a big surprise, and that is that Gobu has become a hobgoblin. which seemed super fast to me. But then I remembered the fight with those wolves, and this most likely made her gain a lot of experience. So I rewarded her by giving her an accessory, and then we went to train as usual. And after that, normally what I would expect is everyone to disperse to hunt, but today I wanted to get everyone together to get ready to upgrade their armor pieces. We also organized, so low-rank goblins will use horn sticks and shell shields, each hunting group of 4 to 5 goblins and a captain, who wear light leather armor and metal weapons. Today will be an important day. I plan to put into action a plan to increase everyone's skills, including mine. So let's go prepare a surprise attack to attack the minds of the orcs. It's not like I have anything personal against them, but at the end of the day this is a game of survival of the fittest. So let's kill them, and certainly, eat them. Then after marching towards those mines, the long-awaited moment arrived. Our first battle. Either it's them or it's us. At the end of it all, we managed to win the battle, and although we had many wounded, fortunately we didn't have any dead goblins. Unlike the orcs, they all died, and for my part I suffered several serious injuries on my arm. But in the end I have a regeneration ability, so it would not be a big problem to heal. Well, I guess. Then we all got together to eat and celebrate, so I used my skills to make fire and eat the roast meat. And while we were together, I realized that all those goblins that I used to see as simple members of the pack are now all my pupils, so if it's in my ability, I'll do what I can to help them all. After we feasted on roast pork, we started to gather the items we managed to collect. There were some spirit stones lying around, so I took all of them. Besides, I also learned more skills. This day was definitely very productive. But this task of roasting meat definitely made me very thirsty. By the way, now that I think about it, since I reincarnated I haven't drunk anything worthy to quench a good thirst. How much I miss drinking a good beer. I wonder what happened to those beers that I had bought moments before I was murdered. Day 27. It's another day and I woke up quite relaxed, and I began to think a bit about what kind of use to give to the spiritual stones that I found yesterday. And while I was thinking and training, a group of unknown goblins arrived. They all had armor, and there were also coming 3 hobgoblins with them. And since they were strangers, I thought they were enemies, and I was even preparing to fight. But grandfather came and told me to calm down, and that those goblins were the ones who had gone on the expedition. In a few words, they are our parents, so I calmed down a bit and thought about going to greet them. But something made a very strange sound. A hobgoblin named Ken had arrived with a group of 5 kidnapped human women, and one of her had some kind of light armor, so it could be some adventurer. But her face was a bit damaged, and judging by the good condition of her clothes, it seems that none have been abused so far. But obviously this is only momentary. Well, now I think differently, and since I am a hobgoblin, my duty is to make some descendants. Also, if we talk about numbers, we have to recover the goblins that died in the expedition. So I decided to ask Ken if he would leave those women at my disposal, while I plan to release them. Because thinking about it, it would not be good to increase the number of goblins in our community. This would bring us serious problems to be able to complement the basic needs of all. Also, human beings may start to see us as a threat and may want to attack us. It would be more convenient to train and strengthen those of us who are already here. And on the other hand, I still want to obtain more knowledge about human beings, since I am new to this place. I expressed to Ken all this I thought, but it seems that he had not liked the idea very much. So the atmosphere became very delicate, and all the goblins of Ken's pack began to take up their weapons. It is noticeable that they did not care. My ideas are interesting, so I decided, if they want to fight they will have it. Ken quickly began to threaten me very strongly and even demanded that I repent or he was going to kill me. So I took up my sword and prepared to fight. But they came to the place 2 more hobgoblins and they stopped us before we started, and I had no idea who they are. Then I met Sei and Sato. Then he explained to me that Sei is a wizard hobgoblin, and he told us that we will fight wisely if we were really going to fight. So he proposed a fight for the leadership of the community. By that time it was already noon. But before starting I asked Sei why then he didn't face Ken, since if he is a magician then he has to be stronger than Ken. But he told me that he was not interested in taking the lead. So once he told me this, I turned my head a bit and saw Ken's goblins playing games of chance. I found it quite surprising that they knew these games. On the other hand, they explained to us the rules of the fight. We can't use weapons and you win if your enemy surrenders or you end up with him. And the referee of the fight will be the grandfather. And without further ado, there we were, Ken and I ready for the referee to give the signal to start the battle. All the other goblins were in favor of Ken, but I didn't care. In any case, I was going to finish him off. And for that exact moment, grandfather gave the signal to start. Like this, Ken launched himself at me, but I managed to stop him and I used my cobweb threads to entangle him and catch him and then climb him up a tree. But I didn't do him any kind of damage. I give him the option to surrender, but Ken, he was too proud and decided instead of giving up to become my punching bag. So I started hitting him so hard that I made everyone present overwhelmed with what they saw. However, Grandpa thought that I had a gun and that's why he threw those threads. But I explained to him that they only came out of my body and that not even I understood how that happened. And about a Ken, I made sure not to kill him. I better let him live. It may be useful. And again I turned to see the others. And they all had an expression on their faces as if they had seen something very scary. But well, the fact is that I earned first place in the community. So as my first term I told everyone not to lay a finger on human women, since I planned to change the rules of this community a bit. And then I went with them to leave them in the storage cave. Yes, where the other women were. They might escape, but in any case it's not convenient for them since there are many dangers outside and I don't think they can survive them. And when we got to the cave I started talking to them and asked them to understand that I didn't want to hurt them, and that I wanted to help them get out of here. But one of them was very impressed because she didn't expect me to be able to communicate with them, and in general with humans. And after trying to earn their trust, one of them finally spoke and told me that the other 4 are just street vendors, and as for her, she belongs to a guild of adventurers who were hired by the vendors to protect them, and that when they were on their way to the destination city of Ironton were attacked, which resulted in a huge massacre because more than half of the vendors' bodyguards were nothing more than just newly recruited practitioners. So they didn't stand a chance against the group that attacked them, which by the way were the goblins. In addition to the slaughter, also looted all their belongings and the women were captured. And after he finished speaking he thought that this story sounds very scary, and by that time they all started crying. I can't imagine the kind of situation they are going through, so I just left them the torch I was carrying and some blankets, and then I left to leave them alone so they can calm down a bit. Day 28. The next day I brought them breakfast first thing in the morning. This time they already look a little more radiant than yesterday, and the same girl who had spoken to me yesterday greeted me today as if nothing had happened and with a smile on her face. However, the other 4 seemed more like they were afraid of me. I understand them. In any case, I'm a member of the goblins that attacked them, so I guess I just have to give them a little more time so they understand that I don't want to hurt them. Immediately I gave them the food made with the same ingredients that the goblins had looted from them. Luckily I know how to cook, so they all ate and that made them feel a little better. I don't blame them. Then I sat down to eat with them and really, the soup that I prepared for them tasted too good. In fact, it is the first civilized food I have eaten. I even got goosebumps from the happiness that tasting that soup gave me. After we all ate, we got into a little bit of confidence and we started talking. And they told me a little about their lives and told me that each of them had a job. So I thought of having them as labor for us that would help them keep their heads busy so they don't think too much about their life before they were kidnapped. So I took advantage of the fact that the first girl knew about blacksmithing, so I asked her to keep our weapons in good condition. On the other part, 2 of the other girls, who actually seemed to be sisters, said that they had knowledge about cooking and tailoring in general. But I don't think goblins want nice clothes to wear, so I assigned the 2 of them to be the cooks. And the last girl, the prettiest of all 5, as well as intelligent and great, had told me that she had knowledge about alchemy, so I told her to make some potions for us. And before she left I forgot, I told the cooks that if they thought about putting poison in the food, they would have a very bad time. But clearly they were very scared. However, I had 1 girl left and I did not remember. This last one has red hair and I had said that she is a rookie warrior, so I will give her the opportunity to continue her training with us in a while to see what happens. Well, with that said, let's talk a little about jobs, since certainly our classification system does not work for humans, since they have a different system of jobs. I had to fix things to compensate a bit for the difference in powers against monsters, so the jobs will have benefits and rewards so that they can face stronger enemies each time. So anyone can level up their work just by researching it. And if someone has a skill, then they can improve it and level it up to make it better. This system was even used by those people who are now called heroes. And yes, there are also jobs for the heroes. We had planned to start training as usual after breakfast, but we had a sudden change of plans. So we spent the whole morning preparing our things to be able to move, since now there are many and this small cave no longer has enough space for everyone. So we won't be able to all live together. We have to find a more spacious place. We really don't have any other option. Well, I guess you already know where we're going to move to. And yes, we'll move to the mines that we seized from the orcs, since to be honest its size is much larger and it is also well reinforced, so we do not have a risk of it collapsing. Also, there are many spiritual stones which I need because they are very useful. On the other hand, I asked Kichai to go ahead with 10 other goblins to guard, since there were still some orcs around and they had to be exterminated. And after an hour we all left, including the humans. I looked back and said goodbye to the place where I was born, and when we got to the mines, it turns out that Kichai and his army had finished with the orcs that were left alive. So he told me to keep the hearts of the bodies, to which I thanked him and told him to distribute the meat with the rest of his army. Having said this, we entered the mines and began to adapt the place for ourselves, since we need a room for weapons, some rooms and some bathrooms, and I also thought about adapting a place for the human girls to live there separated from us. I also made sure to adapt an area for a smithy, another for a kitchen, another for general work, and finally their rooms, thanks to the fact that I had the ability to control Earth. And in the middle of the excavation I found stones of water and fire to give us light and not be in the dark. After this we spent the rest of the day cleaning and accommodating everything, and by that time the girls already had more confidence and we continued talking, and the food was almost ready. Day 29. Today we start training the older goblins, so I asked them to watch the goblins of my generation while they train. However, there is still a bit of disagreement with Ken. Anyway, I don't care if he doesn't want to train, but most likely the other goblins in his army will want to do it later. After a while things got interesting, so I decided to act like an army sergeant and I started to encourage the others to continue working on their training. But one of the adult goblins was getting a little annoyed and wanted to attack me. However, I quickly calmed him down with a very good blow to his snout so that he learned to respect his elders. And during the following hours we were dominated by monotony to train all the time. Also, at the end of the training I decided that everyone should fight with me, since everyone has enough strength. But as I was saying, in the meantime it was pure monotony, since like everyone else are strong, they recover too fast, so I had no choice but to make them repeat the training over and over again. That day we didn't go hunting so as not to interrupt the training, and later I put other rules for us, and once I see Ken, the poor man is still unhappy. Well, I don't care. In any case, the one in charge now is me. Day 30. Today it started raining, so we couldn't go out hunting. But in order not to waste time we had a special training today. I wanted to see who has more strength, so we did a kind of wrestling event. But certainly the difference between goblins and hobgoblins is a lot, so we had to separate the event into two classes. And as expected, the hobgoblins had a very even strength among themselves. And after the event ended, each one went to do different tasks. Some wanted to continue training, others went to practice mining, and others who already knew how to read went to teach the others to do the same. And meanwhile I went to talk a little with Sei since I was somewhat curious about magic. And he told me that there were several magic systems, but I only knew those of fire, liquid, and abyss. And since I have barely read a magic book, I don't know what system it belongs to. I was a little confused with this topic of systems, and after I talked a little more with Sei, I went to see the human women and helped them a little with their work. I also went with double intentions since I also like to see them, because they are all very beautiful. Day 31. It's funny that it's still raining, but we had no choice but to continue inside the house. And after we trained as usual, Kichai and I decided to have a friendly fight, obviously. So I put on some new clothes that were fabric with the skin of some black wolves. Also, because I had taken some things from the orcs, I took advantage and took the halberd from their leader and put it on myself, to stand out among the others as the leader. Then without more than saying, Kichai and I started fighting. And I have really realized that every time I face him it is more difficult for me to defeat him. Obviously he is getting stronger. That is encouraging. I consider him my right hand, and it is difficult for me to defeat him because my specialty is using skills to confuse my enemies and attack them from behind. But Kichai relying on his own strength makes me really have problems against him. Also, he got an axe and has trained very well with it. And by the way, that weapon is combined with a fire spirit stone, and that makes it very troublesome. And although I have a fire tolerance ability, in any case that axe feels very hot. In short time, we spent the rest of the afternoon fighting very intensely, which I didn't know is that while Kichai and I were fighting, some goblins were planning to go to the human girl's room at night, to use them however they wanted. That same night after training we all went to sleep. But thanks to my ability to sense presences, I realized that there were 8 individuals who went to the girl's room and whispered among themselves because they clearly planned to abuse them. But before drawing conclusions, I only took a weapon and began to chase them, because I wanted to confirm with what intentions they were going to where the girls were. Once I confirmed what I had to confirm, I had no other option than to teach those bastards a lesson. Obviously the uproar awoke the girls, and it turns out that the delinquents were nothing less than Ken and his lackeys. I tried to reason with Ken, but it seems that he still doesn't like the idea that I'm now the boss here. So I was forced once more to show him who is now in charge. And after that I tried to talk to the girls to calm them down and explain the situation. And Kichai arrived at the place. I also suppose that the noise attracted him. However, I told him to take Ken and his lackeys at the entrance of the mine and told all the other goblins to meet there, since I want everyone to witness what will happen if they disobey me. After a while, when everyone was already gathered, I took the opportunity to emphasize the rules I had set and what was going to happen to those who disobeyed me. So in front of everyone, one by one, I tortured them and took them to death in the slowest and most painful way possible. And as for Ken, you could see in his eyes that he begged me for mercy, but I had to make sure I gave him the hardest lesson. So I took the time to torture him all night and make him live his last minutes of life in the worst possible way. Day 32, until finally the sun came up. By that time, Ken couldn't stand another second and he died. So, I guess now everyone learned a lesson. Once everything was done, I told everyone to stop training and let whoever wanted to go to sleep well. Certainly we were all up late, although no one wanted to move, because everyone was completely paralyzed with terror. And after we cleaned up the mess, I did go to sleep, until 2 in the afternoon. And when I woke up, I gathered my group and we went hunting. And I assigned a group of 5 bodyguards to the girls to make sure nothing happened to them. I guess they'll be fine, because after what they saw, I don't think anyone else would dare to even try to touch them. But the subject of the bodyguards were just in case. And when we were in the deep forest, we found a triple-horned horse. But we had to be very careful with them, since they are especially stronger than hobgoblins. And by the way, there were 2 of those animals. So I told Gabumi to do her thing with her crossbow. But what we didn't know was that their armor is so strong that not even Gabumi's arrows could pierce them. So Gabum tried to shoot to the places where he had no armor, and when she finally managed to hit, it turned out that the lethal poison with which the arrows were soaked was not enough for those beasts. So clearly the situation was getting out of control. So I thought of catching one of them with my spider silk. And when I was able to tie it up, I left it to the girls to fill it with arrows everywhere. And as for the other horse, we faced it between Kichai and me, and they were already more near that animal. We were able to discover that the scales had a weak point. So we took advantage of that to go through them, and thus we were able to exterminate the beast. It was really hard for us to kill those horses, but that strengthened our ties as a group of hunting. And after that we collected the horns, removed the hearts and scales, and finally consumed. We eat the meat. Obviously by eating their hearts I learned new abilities, quite useful by the way, which left me quite surprised. So I decided to test one of them called Triple Blow. And the truth seemed quite surprising to me because of the strength from the impact of that ability. I was really satisfied with it. After that we went back home to rest and sleep. But something strange happened when just before I fell asleep, the girl with short red hair came to my bed. So like good gentlemen, I slept with her all night, but I must confess nothing happened, but it did feel pretty good sleeping with her. Day 33. The next morning when I woke up, I discovered that there was someone else in my bed, because it was Gabumi who also came to sleep with me. This seemed especially strange to me since not even with my ability to feel presences I could realize that she was here. To the best, Gabumi has some ability that allows her to sneak perfectly. However, I just let it go, because I'm sleeping with 2 girls and that's pretty cool. Then when I went to have breakfast, something very strange happened, and that is that the food had fallen out of my hands. Suddenly my arm didn't work for me, but I remembered that I had slept with those girls and my arms were already getting numb. So I assumed that it would pass and soon it would recover again. What a relief it gives me that I am no longer their pillow. And then we started the day as usual, intense training without stopping. This time Kichai told me that everyone had woken up energetic and with a lot of intensity for their training, because it seems that they understood that they have to become very strong, and they are using me as an example to follow. Also lately in our community there has been a considerable increase in goblins. So I had to reorganize everything and I classified them by teams in order to be more organized, and I will be able to supervise all of them. So I will tell you a little about how things are going. As a first step, I decided that Kichai would command a team which I called Anger Team. In this group there will be the strongest and who will be at the forefront in battles against enemies. Then it will be Sato who will command the Hatred Team, which will wear light armor and specialize in fast and precise attacks. Then there will be Gabumi commanding her team called Regret, a team that will specialize in ranged attacks. Then there will be Gabu commanding her team called Pleasure, and this will be supporting the other groups in small tasks. And finally there will be Sei the Hobgoblin Magician, commanding her team called Agony, a team specialized in magic. And at the moment those would be the teams formed. Meanwhile, when there are more goblins I will see what to do with them. After thinking so much and training, I went hunting. And because everyone else is busy training and studying, I had to go out alone to don't bother anyone. And on the way I found a demon spider, so I took its shells to make more armor, and obviously I ate the rest. I also found some 3-horned horses, so I seized the moment to practice some magic against that horse. According to what Sei told me, with this tangle of magic components, I have to cast the spell first, which requires mana, and then I must have control of the magic and mix it with the amount of mana that the spell requires. And for the last step, the most convenient would be to use a staff to help me. But since I have some skills that allow me to control the mana, I will be able to do it without the need for a staff. So once again I made a Spear of the End. and threw it at the horse, and as a consequence I ripped off its head into the truth. It seemed very cool. I did not expect this spell to be so strong, despite the fact that it is the weakest spell of the variant of death spells, so I better leave this Spear of the End to use it in extreme cases. So I got ready to remove the horns of the animal and eat the meat, and as within this sequence I learned a skill that allows me to produce scales like armor on my own body, and it was quite frustrating because suddenly my arm started to take on a very scaly appearance, like the arm of a lizard. At first I was scared, but I guess that it's the defensive property of that skill, and after I finally calmed down a bit I continued with the hunt, and later I ran into a green slime, and I used my fire magic to incinerate it and ate its core, and managed to learn an ability called metamorphosis. It's kind of funny because it makes my body elastic. It's in my ability to control body fluids, allows me to absorb small creatures. Also, if I were to lose my arms and legs I could continue fighting, and when I'm done I can put them back on later. All this sounds very disgusting, so I'll try not to show it to anyone. After all, it was about time to go home. But something happened when I was going back. I saw a mess of blood on the road, so I followed it to see what it was about. And then I found that beast that grandfather had told me about. A red bear is undoubtedly a real beast, much bigger and more muscular than me. Plus its hair looked like it was made of steel. I thought I would run and get to safety since it is with the type of beast that nobody wants to meet. But I myself don't know why I hadn't run away yet, and instead I was still standing there in front of that bear. But inside my mind I managed to see how I was going to kill it. Sincerely, since reincarnated is the first time I meet a creature stronger than me. And since this is about survival, my instincts told me to fight against him. Also, if I managed to defeat him, I could eat him and thus obtain a lot of power and new abilities. So like this is an extreme case, I decided to conjure another Spear of the End and I threw it at the bear. Meanwhile, in the cave, Gobumi was a little worried about me because the sun was already going down and it was almost getting dark and I hadn't arrived yet. So she went to ask everyone if they knew anything about me. But everyone was very busy with their tasks. And as for me, the Spear of the End was not enough for that bear. In return, I made him angry and he gave me a very hard time. Really, that animal is very tough. Not even my Spear of the End could cause it any damage. And that bear launched to attack me, so I had no choice. It was a hand-to-hand confrontation. And when I had the opportunity, I tried to hit it with my axe in the head. But I didn't manage to do much to it either. I really found myself in trouble. A bear that regenerates wounds also has good reflexes and is extremely strong. This was getting out of control, so I had to resort to using my coated ropes with poison, and I then managed to tie it up. But this bear broke all the ropes and broke free, and as if it were a dragon, an incredible flame came out of its mouth, which honestly, if I had let it catch up, I would be super fried. By that time I had resigned myself to not getting out of this confrontation intact. Everything I could think of was useless against that animal, so as a last resort, I decided to hit it with everything. In a single move I stood in front of him, and waited for him to open his mouth again, so I could attack him with my poison-coated sword. And by the way, I activated my triple hit ability. This will be enough because he may be very hard on the outside, but I very much doubt that it is also inside. And when he opened his mouth again to fire at me, I threw myself against him and managed to hit my accurate blow, going through his big head. But that was not all. This animal managed to hit me with his claw that and thrown me against a rock, and I must say that it hurt too much. I also began to bleed a lot, so at this very moment, we are even. Only I no longer have weapons. They are all broken, including my arm was also broken, but I just have to wait a bit for it to heal. The good thing is that the bear will not be able to use its flames anymore, because it got a piece of my sword buried inside its ugly throat, so it got stuck. I thought about cutting some trees to be able to put out the flames that were setting the place on fire. But before I could do anything, this bear jumped at me again and I had to improvise. So I jumped on it, and I don't know how I did it, but I was able to get through its head once more with the tip of my axe, this time vertically from its skull to its jaw. This time it seems that it suffered damage, but the thing has not finished yet. This animal still has strength. It seems that it was immortal. It is not normal that after 2 accurate blows on the head, that thing is still standing. On the other hand, I was too hurt. That bear just had to hit me to finish me off. This really makes the meal worth it. So I let my impulses take me and I threw myself against the beast again. This time it's all or nothing. Day 34. Due to the strong exhaustion of the fight, I suppose I fell asleep or fainted. Who knows? The good thing is that I was able to wake up and the scene I saw was terrible. I was a mess. There was no part of my body that was not injured and bleeding. And by the way, I had lost my arm. The encouraging thing is that his head was lying there separated from his body, and with the little strength I had, I quickly took his hand and began to eat it. I immediately began to learn new skills. Something very strange, something like I wanted to rank up, appeared in my mind. but all I wanted at that moment was to eat and keep learning skills. And when I finally recovered a little or my strength, I thought not to waste time and skin the bear quickly to be able to take its hide. And suddenly I realized that everything seemed smaller. Even the body of the bear now seemed smaller than last night. But it didn't matter. I had to do what I was going to do. But I remembered that I didn't have my arm, so I had to give priority to fixing it. And so the thing continued and I kept learning more skills, but at that time, I felt very tired and my body ached. And as I could, I ate absolutely all the bear. And then when I finally got my strength back, I took the time to look at my body, and I noticed some different things. Despite that it was all covered in blood, I had some weird tattoos all over my chest. My arm was really thick and my abs were in really good shape. Plus my hair had changed color to a deep gray and it was even longer. But the most crazy is that I had grown 2 horns in my forehead. Then I realized that I was no longer a hobgoblin. And I remembered that strange advertisement that had appeared before telling me if I wanted to evolve to the next phase. And I deduced that that would have been what changed my shape. And yes, now I'm all ogre. On second thought, I guess I subconsciously agreed to this ad that came out earlier. I guess I was too tired to remember it. But to be honest, I didn't expect to become this kind of weirdo. But anyway, I'm already an ogre and it's not that it's a bad thing. In fact, it's quite good. Anyway, I thought that the best thing right now would be to go home. And when I got up, my body was completely naked. So I had no choice but to put on the skin of that bear to cover myself. I have been very lucky this time. Thanks to all my skills, I could defeat that thing. Otherwise, I would not be telling this story anymore. If I had lacked any of my skills, none of this would be happening right now. Everything was cured.